What was your worst "oh duck, I'm actually going to die" moment? Began choking on some gummy worms at a friend's party. Everyone thought I was joking, and I was hopelessly trying to cough it out for a good minute or two before my friend karate chopped me on the back when he realized I was actually choking. I was scared shitless at the time. Thought I was done for. Getting prepped for a neurosurgery that could wreck me in itself. I was getting a knife of antibiotics and waiting on the anesthesiologist to put me under. My whole family was there. We were talking and trying to comfort my wife, who was having a hard time with it. She's holding my hand crying. Mom and Dad trying to hold it together behind her. She looks up at me and I see her go ghost white. First I thought she was going to faint. At the same point I notice my dad run out of the room rather quickly. And that's when it started. Super cold but start pouring sweat. Followed by breathing problems. My throat is swelling shut. Hives everywhere. All in a matter of 45 seconds. In rushes at least 5 nurses and 3 doctors plus an anesthesiologist. Doc tells me I'm allergic to the IV, so they have to put me out. Now, I didn't even get to tell her I loved her. I was trying to say the words but couldn't, and as the darkness crept in, it was the first time the fear of death set in. When I was a child I wanted to bungee jump. And I had a playset in my backyard with a climbing rope. Once on the second story of the playset I got the rope that led to the ground. But I couldn't get it properly tied around my waist, so I tied it around my neck and jumped off. Luckily somehow I didn't snap my neck. But then I was left hanging there. My feet couldn't reach the ground. I remember trying to stretch my toes to reach and clawing, trying to use my hands to get some room to breathe, but I couldn't. I realized I was going to die. Luckily I had a friend over who ran inside to get my mom. And she was able to get me down, which I don't really remember. I do remember the rope burn I had around my neck for days though. Edit, I'm a girl, doesn't really matter. People just keep calling me man, and I was 5. Mountain biking and I just about slipped off a 30-foot ledge. Barely caught myself. That the most panic and complete fear I have ever felt in my life, and I never wanna feel it again. Damn. As a mountain biker that's one of my biggest fears. Flying off a cliff gorge. I run clips, so if that did happen to happen, I probably wouldn't be able to unclip very good. Fell 3 stories. Due to freezing rain on the roof that night. And on the way down I was certain I was going to die. I went out there to talk on the phone since my bedroom was above my parents'. I fell at about a 45-degree angle onto my feet. The impact caused my T9 vertebrae to fracture. And once I fell from that angle to flat, my right lung collapsed and I had a brain bleed on the front and back of my brain. Luckily my father had heard me scream and found me within a couple minutes, coughing up blood into the grass. He then drove me to the hospital and nearly passed out a few times on the way there, figuring that it was already too late for me. Spent the whole ride trying to calm him down as I felt the pressure increase in my chest from the amount of blood filling my chest due to the collapsed lung. When I arrived at the hospital I blacked out as nurses and my parents and family doctor were around me looking worried sick. TLDR. Fell 3 stories. Fractured spine. Collapsed lung. And 2 brain contusions on the front and back of my brain because of freezing rain that night. Got a piece of steak stuck down my throat. Needed the Heimlich, which my dad performed. Scary stuff. I finished the steak. Ducking never let a good steak go to waste. Good job, soldier. I woke up and saw a huge protrusion in my ribs. I thought for sure it was a malignant tumor. Broke down then and there. Only to find out later from the doctor that I had fractured my ribs and somehow not realized it. I can imagine you being reduced to a whimpering pile in front of the doctor and he was just like, nah bro. That's just your bones. That time when we slid down that glacier face and went down and down. Faster and faster until my ex's ice pick and a tree stopped us. Duck that. My ice climbing days are done. I was roofied at a party. Besides not being able to ducking, move and vomiting uncontrollably. My blood pressure and body temp tanked. It took an hour for me to get to hospital. And God, was that bad. I genuinely thought I was going to die and came to peace with it. This was a week ago. Duck me dead. I hope there's a police investigation going. Unfortunately no. I was taken to a sheet hospital and they didn't test for a hypnol. They didn't even take my bag. It wasn't until after that I connected the dots and realized, I only had 2 drinks. B, I had all the symptoms of being roofied. C, a few different guys were illegally jetting me up at one point. The whole thing is a blur. Honestly. My uncle and I were swimming around a bunch of rocks at the edge of a beach one time and it was super choppy. Big mistake because it got to the point where we wanted out and we couldn't swim the way we came because the tide was ripping way too much our way. So we tried to get up on the rocks. My uncle got stuck in some fishing line that was left there and I was a bit further down. Got dumped right into a deep rock pool. High sides and I couldn't get out of it. After spending what felt like 5 minutes but it probably wasn't. Getting pushed underwater when trying to scramble onto the rocks. Not reaching anything worth grabbing onto and getting cut from them because of the heavy waves. I just resorted to screaming and thinking I was probably genuinely going to drown. I didn't know what to do. Then some random guy who happened to be in the area spearfishing came up and dragged me out. Iraq USMC. Got knocked down by an RPG blast ridiculously close to me after an IED. Disabled our vehicle. Lost my rifle. Was being sprayed by AK fire. Ears ringing. Barely conscious Army Black Hawk shows up and quells enemy fire. Buddy pulls me to safety. I thought I would for sure be held good times. I was 15 and walking across a railroad bridge over a creek when I heard the train coming from around the curve. The bridge was not wide enough to stand to the side. I ran back the way I came. As fast as I could. With the train coming from behind. The railroad ties were the perfect length for my stride. As I got near the embankment, the ties suddenly became further apart and I tripped banging my shin and I couldn't get back up. I crawled the last 30 feet on my hands and knees. Rolling off the track at the earliest point possible. A solid 90 seconds later the train came by. I had lots more time than I feared. But I was terrified during the run. As I was upside down and everything was going in slow motion when I rolled my car. I'm still here though and had no injuries whatsoever. Wear your seatbelts, kids. It boggles my mind that people don't wear seatbelts. A little discomfort for a lot of safety. I first read that as when I was in the upside down. Too much Stranger Things I think. It is added comfort for me. Just seems like I'm driving naked without a seatbelt on. Back in my junkie days I was drinking heavily and doing oxycodone and noticed that I wasn't able to breathe normally and could only gasp in big gasps of air. That lasted a good long time before I could breathe again. Was pretty sure I was gonna die there. Don't do drugs. Was that your turning point? Nope. Continued for quite some time after that until I lost everything and had to rebuild from scratch. Doing a lot better now though. I told my wife I quit drinking soda because she was on my ass about it. A few months later we hop in the car and I realize I forgot to toss out the Coke can in the car's coaster. This is the best one. After lots of head wound Iraqi fight choking stories. Stage 4 mouth cancer. Jaw amputated. Still alive. No sign of more cancer yet. Almost died in first day post surgery. Chin up mate. Got pinned down by repeated RPG fire which probably only lasted for about 15 minutes. Sounds short. But felt like eternity. They all sounded like they were landing right on top of us and we had no cover except a roadside ditch. I was pretty sure that was it. Took a while to lose the shakes after that one. RPG fire is one of the scariest sounds ever. 15 minutes? That's a goddamn eternity. I drank a whole house cup of straight up whiskey at once. I was born with spinal muscular atrophy type 2 so I have a really weak respiratory system. Not too long after I finished that drink I needed to cough but was quickly losing consciousness and I blacked out. As I was blacking out though, I was fully aware of what was going on and could feel myself slowly losing the ability to breathe and how painful it was. All I could think about was what was going to come next. I can't imagine how that would have felt. I've heard that drowning act would be the most peaceful way to die, but I've also heard failing to breathe and passing out is painful as duck too. They don't really go hand in hand. Glad you made it, man. PS. This post is making me realize how fragile life is. Tried swimming across the Menai Strait, almost drowned, made it to the bank about 2 miles for where I started. Was a long walk home. Was constipated for 5 days. Walked up 5 floors to my room to look for meds to take when every step I took had me wanting to scream. Had to call my boss to carry me down and take me to the hospital. Remember to sheet people. When I was in a health careers program, I went on multiple rotations observing nurses in different fields. One of my rotations was a post-op unit, which consisted of mostly abdominal related surgeries. According to the nurse, they see a large portion of these patients that come in with severe abdominal pain, and when asked about their last BM, they usually say it's been 5-7 days. None of them thought it was odd that they hadn't pooped in nearly a week though. So yes, it's important to remember to go. It's also important to contact your doctor, call a nurse line if you haven't been able to go for a couple of days and nothing is helping fix that. X. Diet or meds. It's not normal to go that long without pooping. Guys, many of the patients actually had paralysis of a portion of their intestines, thus the inability to go. I was in the ICU and a severe infection that landed me there also caused swelling of the brain. It was the worst pain I've ever experienced and I was actually wishing for death. Fair out. Did they find out what caused it? Yes. Thankfully. It was a common stomach infection from food that usually just gives you flu-like symptoms. The reason it got so bad in me was that I didn't realize I was sick. And I was under a lot of stress for my exams. I'm actually lying in bed still recovering right now, but on my way up a mountain pass to work my brakes gave out and I freaked out and went right off the cliff. I rolled 5 times before being stoked by a tree. Most of the skin on the top of my head got rubbed off and it has little bits of glass in it. If I move my right arm wrong it pops out of socket and I broke my left hand in 2 spots, but I'm sure glad I'm alive. The cops that showed up to the scene gave me a ticket for careless driving because I got distracted by the fact that my brakes gave out. I'm going to court to try to get it thrown out because that's some bullshit. Here's my wristimgur.com. For some reason it's all I could focus, so I didn't get any pictures of my bloody face or wreck. I'll probably be able to within the next few days though. Woke up one morning unable to breathe without severe pain in one lung and coughing up blood. Called the NHS advice number 4 over the phone checkup. And they were gonna send me an ambulance. But I live a 10 minutes walk from a hospital, so still walked instead. They x-rayed it and found a massive infection in the affected lung. I got amoxicillin and anti-inflammatory drugs. Also I couldn't sleep in my bed for a whole week because it put too much pressure and caused too much pain in the affected lung. So I had to try sitting in the single seat couch with leg rest every night. TLDR, I had pneumonia and nearly lost a lung, died. Took 3 scoops of C4, a pre-workout supplement, which is equivalent to 500 mg caffeine. Was certain I was about to go into cardiac arrest in the gym. Went into the bathroom and sat on the floor unable to move for an hour. Never exceed 1 scoop. Kids. When I was walking around New York with my headphones in the distance I heard someone screaming, "You stop." I thought it was for someone else. Until a car zoomed past me, barely hitting me by mere centimeters. There was a cute girl next to me, so I kept my emotional overload completely internal and walked away with a straight face. 4th of July when I was 14. I was at a party in a marina. The parents were taking everyone out on their jet skis and I was the last to go out when the tide started coming in. So I'm on the back of my friend's uncle's jet ski. And we're close to the shore moving towards an incoming wave that was way too big. We had to jump it. And there was no backside. So we fell about 15 feet and landed flat on the surface. I fell off and hit my knee against the side. We managed to get back on, but it stalled and the waves kicked it to shore. I was maybe 100 feet out and I can't swim to save my life, literally. If I weren't wearing a life jacket, I have no doubt I would be dead. Even with a life jacket, I barely managed to get to shore and swallowed a lot of water. I ended up walking along the beach back to their house. When I got back, I learned that the driver had broken his leg. And when I took off my wetsuit, I realized I had a gash on my kneecap that required 9 stitches. I still have a pretty nasty picture of it and a sweet scar to prove it. I took a raft across this giant abandoned lake in southeast Kansas. With no ducking life jacket. One of my oars snapped in two and I was like fuck. Rowing with only one oar and it slipped into the water. Jumped in to grab it and the wind carried my raft away from me so fast I couldn't get it. Bobbing up and down in the middle of an abandoned lake a mile and a half from shore, watching my raft float away was the worst feeling I ever had on my life. I said, well, this is it. Today is the day I die. Cliff diving in Indonesia. Couldn't find the proper place that was listed everywhere, so we jumped somewhere that looked like a clear jump. Friend jumped in. I jumped in and we couldn't get back up the cliff anymore due to massive waves beating us back towards the big cliff behind us. The cliff we wanted to get back up on was made of sharp volcanic rock, so that didn't help. Eventually, exhausted, we got up at a calm moment. Couldn't stand anymore. Legs dead from keeping me from drowning. Not a very exciting story, but one I hope others won't experience.